Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. First and foremost, we congratulate Sahib al-Asri wa Zaman, Ajralallah ta'ala farajah, the great Maraja and all believers across the globe as we pass by, as we lived the blessed, joyful birth anniversary of the Lady of Purity and Light, Sayeda Fatima al-Zahra, salawatullahi alayha. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to make us from her sincerest followers in this world and the next, and to keep us on the path of the Lady of Light, بحق الصلاة على محمد وآل محمد. The word Shia has been used in history in reference to the group of Muslims who believed in the imamate of Ali ibn Abi Talib, salawatullahi alayh. The group that believed that Ali, peace be upon him, was the direct successor and caliph after Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. However, when we look at the traditions of Ahlul Bayt, salamullahi alayhim, we find that the word Shia, or Shi'at Ahlul Bayt, Shi'at Ali, was used in two different ways. Firstly, the Imams alayhimus salam at times would say Shia or Shi'atuna, our Shi'as, and they would refer to those who believe in the imamate of Ahlul Bayt, salamullahi alayhim, in a collective manner. For the traditions are very clear. One must believe in the imamate of Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam, but also must believe in the imamate of the rest of the imams. Such that some traditions tell us, when I say traditions, we're talking about the words of Ahlul Bayt, salamullahi alayhim. Some traditions tell us that if a person disbelieves in one imam, he will be like he who disbelieved in all the imams alayhimus salam. One who neglects one of the imams of Ahlul Bayt will be like he who neglected all of Ahlul Bayt, salamullahi alayhim. So sometimes Ahlul Bayt say Shia or Shi'atuna, our Shi'as, and they refer to those who believe in them. Then again, in a good amount of traditions, we find that Ahlul Bayt, salamullah alayhim, present a new definition to the word Shia. And they tell us that a Shia is not only a mere believer in Ahlul Bayt, is not only a person who believes in their imamate, in their guardianship and authority, and disassociates himself from their enemies, but on top of that, he emulates Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salatu wassalam, meaning he follows their teachings and their footsteps. So the Shi'i, the real Shi'i, is not a person who merely believes in Ahlul Bayt, but on top of that, he follows their commands. When Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salatu wassalam tell us that a particular deed is mandatory, he applies it. When Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam tell us that a particular deed is forbidden, that person avoids it. If you want to enhance your understanding of this issue, review Tafsir al-Askari. In the book Tafsir al-Askari, there is a good amount of traditions that Imam al-Askari is narrated to have said as he narrates the words of his forefathers, Rasulullah, Ali, al-Zahra, al-Hasan, al-Husayn, and other Imams alayhimus salam, where they say that the Shi'i is the believer who believes in Ahlul Bayt, disassociates himself from their enemies, and on top of that, he emulates the Imams, salamullahi alayhim. Which means that the person who believes in Ahlul Bayt but allows himself, gives himself the green light to defy their commands, to disobey their commands, is a muwali. But he's not a Shi'i. He has not reached that level yet. Yes, you can call him Shia from the aqaidi perspective, when you look at his beliefs and his beliefs only. But the real Shi'i, as we said, the real Shi'a, the real Shi'iyya is a person who not only believes in Ahlul Bayt but also follows their footsteps, salamullahi alayhim. The likes of who? The likes of Salman, Al-Muhammadi, Abu Dhar, Miqdad, Ammar, Habib bin Mudahir, Uthman bin Sa'id al-Amri, and their likes. May Allah bless their souls. Now, in order to become a Shi'i, in order to become a person who actually follows and emulates the footsteps of Ahlul Bayt salamullahi alayhim, we are in need of what? We are in need of understanding what Ahlul Bayt salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayhim have said. It is essential to look into the words of Ahlul Bayt. All of us have some idea of who Ahlul Bayt were salamullahi alayhim. And we will never reach a point in which we understand the realities of these infallibles. Their realities are beyond comprehension. Read the segments of الزيارة الجامعة الكبيرة. شبابنا خلينا نركز. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. Read the segments of الزيارة الجامعة الكبيرة and you will get to that conclusion. For example, if we look at why Sayeda Zahra was named Fatima, salawatullah alayha, we have a good amount of traditions telling us why Fatima was called Fatima. And one tradition says, لأن الخلق فطموا عن معرفتها, because the creations are unable to understand, to comprehend the reality of Fatima Zahra salamullahi alayha. So each one of us has an idea of who Ahlul Bayt were, but on top of that, we need to know what they said. What did they say? What are their commands? So we may come forth and apply what Ahlul Bayt said, salamullahi alayhim. When we look at the Shia world in general, without pointing fingers here and there, we find that one major problem we fall into is that we will apply certain commands of Ahlul Bayt, then again we will disregard other commands. And that is a problem. I'm not saying every single muwali does this, but some muwalin do. You'll find the muwali, for example, praying and fasting, but when it comes to business transactions, he does not mind fooling people and cheating them. Then again, when you'll find a muwali, for example, who has good akhlaq, he is sincere, he is truthful, he is ameen, trustworthy, but when it comes to weddings, he'll forget Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. During weddings, it's as if he does not know Allah, he does not know Ahlul Bayt, salawatullah wa salamu alayhim. He'll be dancing or listening to music and doing similar deeds. Then again, you might find a muwali who allows himself to backbite his fellow believing brothers or sisters in faith. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala detests ghiba, when He detests backbiting. So what we find when we look at the Shia world in general, we find that a lot of us are muwalin, walillahi alhamd. All praise belongs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for that. But we need to work on ourselves to become Shia. Like who? Like Salman, like Abu Dhar, like Miqdad, rahmatullah ta'ala alayhim. And that needs what? It needs application. It needs self-purification, number one. And it needs knowledge. We need to know what Ahlul Bayt said, salamullah alayhim. And we need to apply their commands, alayhimus salam. That being said, tonight I want to shed light on a few traditions of light that were uttered by the Lady of Light, Fatima Zahra salawatullahi alayha. A few traditions that we are in great need of. Starting first of all with a short narration that Muhammad bin Jarir al-Tabari, Shi'i, may Allah bless his soul, narrates in the book Dala'il al-Imama. I've told you once, there were two individuals who were called Muhammad bin Jarir al-Tabari. One was a Sunni. He was a Sunni scholar, and he's the one who wrote the famous book of history called Tarikh al-Tabari. He also has a book of tafsir. But then again, there was another scholar with the exact same name, Muhammad bin Jarir al-Tabari, but he was Shi'i. He wrote a fabulous book called Dala'il al-Imama, which contains very important narrations. In that book, you'll find a narration going back to Al-Imam al-Ridha alayhi salam and his brother Al-Husayn. Both of them narrated that their forefathers said that Imam Ali alayhi salam said that Fatima al-Zahra alayha salam said. Fatima said what? She narrated one of the traditions of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam. She told the Imam, my father, Rasulullah told me, so and so. You shall hear the tradition in a bit, inshaAllah azza wa jal. But before we get into the tradition, what do you realize? You realize that Fatima alayhi salam was speaking with who? With Imam Ali, the gate of the city of knowledge. And she was narrating one of Rasulullah's narrations to Imam Ali, alayhima as-salatu was-salam. By doing so, Sayyidah Zahra is setting a beautiful example for us men and women in regards to our spousal relationship. How beautiful is it when a man converses with his wife, or a wife, a lady, converses with her husband about what? About Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, about Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam, about Ahlul Bayt salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayhim. So you find the Lady of Light talking to Amir al-Mu'mineen. She tells him, Rasulullah told me. He told you what, Ya Fatima? She says, he told me, sallallahu alayhi wa alihi, ya habibata abiha, O beloved of her father, kullu muskirin haram, every intoxicant is unlawful, wa kullu muskirin khamr, and every intoxicant is a type of wine. That is the tradition that we greatly need today, especially in the West. Why? Well, because you find sometimes Muslims, unfortunately, drinking alcohol. Sometimes you might even find muwalin, people who believe in Ahlul Bayt, alayhim as-salatu was-salam, who will consume intoxicants. Either they'll drink wine, or beer or the likes, or they'll consume drugs, God forbid. In this tradition, Rasulullah is saying what? Every intoxicant is on the same level. Meaning what? Just as we must avoid wine, other intoxicants must be avoided. Ya Rasulullah, even if the government allows me to consume that intoxicant? Yes. If the government allows you, Allah does not allow you. So you have to refrain from it. The Prophet says, Ya habibata abiha, O beloved of her father, kullu muskirin haram, every intoxicant is unlawful, wa kullu muskirin khamr, and every intoxicant is a type of wine. So I, the muwali, understand that just as I should avoid the consumption of wine, I should also avoid the consumption of what? Of any other intoxicant. And this reality will be clarified when I understand that Allah Jalla Jalaluh forbade wine because it does what? Because it intoxicates you. Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam explained why Allah forbade wine. And they said in some of their traditions, because it intoxicates you. Intoxicating you means what? It means at a certain phase, you lose your mind. You're unable to understand what you're doing. And so at that point, as Imam al-Ridha alayhi salam says, the human being might commit any indecency. He might prostrate for an idol. He might kill himself. He might kill his mom, his wife, his children, God knows. Allah Azza wa Jal doesn't want the human being to be in that state. Allah honored us, humans, by giving us a tool that enables us to be where? A tool that enables us to be the masters of the universe. You might tell me, the masters of the universe? Yes, the masters of the universe. Allah has said it, that you have the potential, and I have the potential, and every human being has the potential to be not only an honorable human, but a master of the universe. When He said in Surah Al-Bayyinah, the surah that I believe most of you know, if not all of you, إِنَّ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ أُولَٰئِكَ هُمْ خَيْرُ الْبَرِيَّةِ. Surely those who believe and perform good deeds are what? They are the best creations. They're the best. They're at the top of the pyramid. And the best out of the best are Muhammad wa al Muhammad salawatullahi alayhim. So Allah Azza wa Jal doesn't want us to go through that state, the state of intoxication, because it makes you lose your mind. Once you lose your mind, khalas, you might commit any indecency. So this hadith, as short as it is a beautiful narration of light that we are in deep need of, especially in the West. Alhamdulillah, we might be people who don't even think about drinking alcohol, but you might have people within your circle who do think about this. So transferring this hadith to them is very important, because it reminds us that a true Fatimi will not consume intoxicants. A true Fatimi will not be found in bars or nightclubs or the likes. He will avoid it. And here, it is essential for someone who finds himself weak before intoxicants to remember that the Lady of Light does not want him to consume intoxicants. So he can combat that weakness by using his love and loyalty towards Fatima al-Zahra alayha salam. Fatima, salawatullah alayha, has a special position in the heart of every believer. Any believer will revere the Lady of Light. A person who does not revere Fatima al-Zahra cannot even be a believer. You're not a believer if you don't revere Fatima al-Zahra salawatullahi wa salamu alayha. And you'll find, if you speak with any believing man or woman about Zahra al-Batul, that she has a special spot in his or her heart. So, if a believer, God forbid, finds himself somewhat weak in front of intoxicants, let him remember the narration of Fatima and the fact that the true Fatimi will not consume intoxicants. By doing that, he will strengthen himself to avoid those intoxicants. This is one narration. Again, a narration of light given by the Lady of Light, alayha as-salam. The second tradition I'd like to share with you tonight is also one that is quite interesting, and one that maybe some of you have heard before, but again, we are in deep need of this narration. When I say we, I'm not talking about the Shias. I'm not talking about the Muslims. I'm talking about the world, because you're going to realize that the world is moving in one direction that opposes what is Sayeda Zahra alayha salam is about to say. Again, I say the world. The world is moving in a direction that opposes what Fatima al-Zahra salamullah alayha is about to say. What is this tradition? You can find it in Wasa'il al-Shia by Al-Hurr al-Amili, which is a secondary source that narrates what the primary sources like Al-Kafi or Al-Istibsar narrated. In that book, he cites the book Kashf al-Ghumma, whose author cites another book called Akhbar Fatima alayha salam. The tradition says one day Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi asked his companions, what is best for a lady? What is best for women? For some reason, the tradition says no one was able to answer Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi. none of his companions were able to provide Rasulullah with the correct answer. And so Imam Ali went to Sayeda Fatima alayha salam and informed her of what had happened. Here, what I understand from the tradition is that Imam Ali alayhi salam wanted the answer to stem from Fatima to Zahra. The Imam alayhi salam could have answered Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. But the question pertained to who? To women. So the Imam wanted the answer to come from a lady. In fact, from the mistress of the women of the worlds, so that the answer could be more effective. So it could have a greater impact on society and especially women. He went to Fatima alayhi salam and informed her of what had happened. So Zahra told him, I know what is best for a lady. I know what's best for a woman. What's best for women, ya Fatima? She said, alayhi salam, خَيْرٌ لِلنِّسَاءِ أَنْ لَا يَرَيْنَ الرِّجَالِ وَلَا يَرَاهُنَّ الرِّجَالِ. She said, it is best for women that they don't see men and that they are not seen by men. Again, focus on the word what? Khair. Best. Zahra alayhi salam knows that in certain circumstances, a lady has to speak to a non-mahram man or vice versa. She knows that in certain circumstances, there might be a need to be in the presence of a non-mahram. Hence she's saying khair. It's best for women not to see men, nor to be seen by men. Amir al-Mu'minin alayhi salam took the word of Fatima alayhi salam and went to Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi. He gave him the answer. The Prophet asked him, where did you get this answer from? He told him, from Fatima, from Zahra alayhi salam. So the Prophet said, Ashhadu anna Fatima bid'atun minni. I testify that Fatima is part of me. By saying so, the Prophet was confirming that Zahra gave the exact answer he wanted. That what Zahra said alayha salam is actually part of the Islamic teachings, part of the Islamic concepts. It is best for women not to be seen by men, nor to see men. Which means that Zahra is telling us it is important to have segregation between both genders, between non-mahrams. And the more segregation we have, the better it will be, not only for women, but for men as well. When you come to our global circumstances, what do you see? You see the exact opposite of what Fatima Zahra is saying, right? Especially in the West. You find that there is excessive mixing in most places, if not all. In most places, there's what? Excessive mixing. In your workplace, there's mixing between non-mahrams. At school, there's mixing between non-mahrams. In the park, there's mixing between non-mahrams. So on and so forth. There's a lot of emphasis. You have one movement or several movements that are emphasizing on this issue. We need to have more and more mixing between non-mahrams. Zahra says the opposite, alayhi salam. She says, خَيْرٌ لِلنِّسَاءِ أَنْ لَا يَرَيْنَ الرِّجَالِ وَلَا يَرَاهُنَّ الرِّجَالِ. This is a reality that we need to keep in mind because this is part of our faith. It's part of Islam. We can't forget this reality. And I'm not addressing women only. I'm addressing men as well. We can't forget this reality. When we come to the world of social media, what do we see? We see disasters. I'll be very honest, disasters when you come to the world of social media. Whether we're looking at, the behavior of men or the behavior of women. So remembering this narration of light is key because it's part of our faith. The more segregation we have, the better it will be for all of us, not only for women, for men as well. Because with segregation, you'll have what? An atmosphere. You'll create an atmosphere of purity, an atmosphere of chastity, especially when other segments of Islam are applied. And this is one point that I want all of you to keep in mind. You know, one of the major flaws that we find in the Muslim nation today, in the Muslim world, is the partial application of Islam. Sometimes a person might tell you, does Islam have the solution to all problems? If I ask you that question, what would you say? Yes or no? It does? Are you sure? No. It does. It does have. But now another question comes to mind. If it has the solution to all problems, how come we see so many problems in the Muslim world? What would you say? Because of shaitan? Okay. What else? What is it? They don't read Quran? Some Muslims do, right? Aha. Nafs al-ammara. All of your answers are correct. But one major flaw in the Muslim world is that a Muslim will pick and choose from Islam what he wants. I like salat, I'll pray. I don't like the fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forbids music. I'll listen to music. I like the fact that Allah Azza wa Jalla tells us to be honest, to be truthful. That's beautiful. I don't like hijab. I won't practice hijab. Right? I like the fact that Allah Azza wa Jalla tells us that we can't, cheat other people. But I don't like khums. I don't want to pay khums. My money is mine. You get your own money. Jayyid? That's a problem. When you have partial application of Islam, obviously you'll have what? Chaos. You'll have an amount of chaos or an amount of disorder. Many Muslims have learned from Islam that it forbids what? It forbids adultery and fornication and whatever leads to adultery and fornication, right? It is unlawful, for example, to have a boyfriend in Islam if you're a lady, and a girlfriend in Islam if you're a man, correct? But some Muslims have forgotten that Islam also highly emphasized on the importance of marriage and simplified marriage. It made it extremely easy to get married. So if I want to apply Islam on a collective level or a holistic level, then I have to apply all of Islam, not only part of it. Yes, when you have segregation between non-mahrams, and then you have the other recommendations or commands of Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam being applied, one of which is to simplify marriage, then you will see an atmosphere of what? Purity. An atmosphere of chastity existing within the Muslim world. So in short, the person who wants to reach the level of the Shia, the person who wants to become like Habib bin Mudahir, like Zuhair bin al-Qayn, rahmatullah alayhima, like Zakaria bin Adam, must not only believe in Ahlul Bayt, but also must follow their guidelines, alayhim as-salatu was-salam. And to follow their guidelines, my brothers and sisters, we need to know what they said. We need to learn. It's time to open the books of narrations and to see what have Ahlul Bayt salawatullah wa salamuhu alayhim said. Of course, when you do that, you always refer to a scholar in case you run through a narration that you don't understand properly, and you will go through these narrations. You will, if you read narrations, you will go through cases in which you're unsure what the Imam means, or the narration might cause you to, question a particular matter. Hence, you have to always have your connection with a trusted, honest, pious scholar who takes his knowledge from Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam, so he can answer your questions, or he can guide you to those who can answer your question. When a person emulates Fatima al-Zahra, when a person emulates Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salatu wassalam, he'll be getting closer and closer to what? Closer and closer to being a Shi'i, like Salman and like Abu Dharr rahmatullah alayhima. This is one major Fatimi lesson. A what? A Fatimi lesson? A lesson taught by Zahra alayha salatu wassalam. She gave that lesson once by simply walking. Really? By simply walking? Yes. How? I'm pretty sure you've all heard of Al-Khutbah Al-Fadakiyya, right? The Fadakiyya sermon. The Fadakiyya sermon is a long sermon, but it has a beginning, as in there's an introduction to that sermon. The narration explains how Sayeda Fatima left her house to deliver the sermon. And there's a specific part in the introduction to the sermon which proves the point we just said. What does the introduction say? It says when Abu Bakr intended, with a firm intention, to deprive Fatima alayha salam, the land of Fadak, and the news reached her, she rolled her veil around her head. And then she used her jilbab, which is a cloak, a massive cloak that can cover the whole body, what we call abaya. She used her jilbab to cover all of her body. I want you to keep this point in mind because it helps you understand, helps me and you understand. Verse 59 of Surah Al-Ahzab, when Allah says, Jalabib yudnina alayhinna min jalabibihin. Let them bring their jalabib, the plural of jilbab, closer to their bodies. But that's not my main point right now. This was just a side note. She used her jilbab to cover all of her body, then she emerged from her house. In what state? She emerged from the house as she was surrounded, as she was accompanied by a group of her female relatives and servants. Like, for example, Fidda rahmatullah alayha, Asma bint Umays and their likes. It is said Zainab salamullah alayha was with Fatima az-Zahra. Now the tradition says she was walking. And as she was walking, she was stepping on the tips of her cloak, which meant that the cloak of Fatima was longer than her body. And her walk was the exact walk of Rasulullah Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi. This is the main point that I wanted to mention. Her walk was the walk of who? Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi. Which meant even though she was covering all of her pure body alayha salam with that massive or large cloak, even though she was stepping on the tips of her cloak, she was still preserving the walk of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam. Here there's a Fatimi message, which is, O Muslimin, O Muslimat, emulate my father Rasulullah even in the way he walks, even in the way he talks, even in the way he eats. If she's telling us to emulate Rasulullah in minor issues like walking, then obviously we have to emulate him in what? In major issues. So through her mere walk, she was confirming this point, that the Muslim, the wise man, the wise woman will emulate the Holy Prophet. And that will be done by emulating who? Ahlul Bayt salawatullah wa salamuhu alayhim. So the more we apply from their commands, the closer we will be to being true Shi'as, the likes of Salman and Abu Dharr rahmatullah alayhima. These Shi'as whose status will be revealed on the Day of Judgment. See, the Day of Judgment is a marvelous day where several realities are revealed. Believe it or not, on that day, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reveals the impeccable status of who? Of the Shi'as of Ahlul Bayt. Let alone revealing the status of Ahlul Bayt. That's a given. On that day, Allah will show the world that Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam hold the supreme status in the eyes of God subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we have multiple traditions, not just one, speaking about this, speaking about how Zahra al-Batul, how her status will be manifested in a great manner on that day, on the Day of Judgment. One of those narrations which I would like to narrate tonight as we conclude our lecture is a beautiful narration found in Bihar al-Anwar. Allama al-Majlisi rahimahullah cites the book Tafsir Furat ibn Ibrahim. And the narration is basically a dialogue between who? Rasulullah and Sayeda Fatima sallallahu alayhi wa alihima. Imam Ali narrates it. If you want to hear what will happen on the Day of Judgment, if you want to hear this beautiful story that will truly make a believer cry out of happiness, then sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. I'm going to somewhat summarize the story. I won't mention every single detail because the narration is quite lengthy. I'll summarize it and paraphrase it for you. The Imam says, one day Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi entered upon Fatima. And he found her grieving. She was sad. The Prophet told her, what makes you sad, O Fatima? She told him that she was remembering the Day of Judgment. And she was remembering certain calamities or hardships that people would face on that day. Imagine Sayyidah Zahra alayha salam, who's infallible. She's remembering what? The Day of Judgment. And she's worried about that day. Although she's infallible. And she knows that she and her father, husband, and progeny will be in the highest levels of heaven. Heaven was created for them. Salamullahi alayhim. The universe was created for them. But even then she's worried about the Day of Judgment. There's a lesson here. For me, for you, for our lives. If the infallible is worried about that day, then we have to be worried as well. Then we have to be preparing ourselves well for that day. Rasulullah told her sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi, he told her, O daughter, certainly it will be a great day. The Day of Judgment will be a great day. What's so great about it? Well, number one, as we said, several realities will be shown on that day. And number two, it will be a difficult day. Meaning in itself it's difficult. Will it be easy for some people? Yes. Those who prepare well for the Day of Judgment, they will find ease on that day. Those who adhere to Ahlul Bayt will find ease on that day. But in general, in itself, it is what? A day of hardship. It is a day of difficulty. شبابنا ونركز إن شاء الله. All right. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. Then he told her, however, again, Rasulullah is talking to Fatima salawatullah alayhima. However, Jibreel alayhi salam has informed me that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said. When he says Allah said, it means this narration is what? Hadith Qudsi. Allah ta'ala is informing Rasulullah about these events that you shall hear. Allah said that the first people whose graves will open on the Day of Judgment will be myself, Ibrahim al-Khalil alayhi salam, and Ali ibn Abi Talib salamullahi alayhi. Firstly, my grave will open, then Ibrahim al-Khalil's grave will open, then Ali ibn Abi Talib's grave will open, meaning these will be the first three individuals who are resurrected on the Day of Judgment. Then Jibreel alayhi salam will come to your grave, addressing who? Az-Zahra. And he will uphold 7 domes. 7 domes on top of your grave. Domes of light. and Israfil alayhi salam will come forth with 3 garments of light. Israfil alayhi salam will stand beside your grave, beside the portion of the grave in which Fatima's head should be found. And he will say, O Fatima, daughter of Muhammad, rise. قومي إلى محشرك. Rise for the day of judgment, so you may be on that day wherever Allah wants you to be. He says, at that point, Ya Fatima, you will rise. You'll be resurrected. You'll come out of your grave. You will come out in a state of peace. You will not be afraid. Your body will be covered. And you will take the 3 garments from Israfil alayhi salam. Israfil will give you the 3 garments of light. Then what happens? Then an angel called Zuqa'il will come with a she-camel from heaven. A she-camel made out of light. Bear in mind, when the tradition says she-camel, possibly the Prophet really means there will be a she-camel made out of light. Or he means that some sort of means of transportation will be brought to Fatima alayha as-salatu was-salam. Nonetheless, he says, Zuqa'il will bring a she-camel made out of light, which will have a rein made out of humid pearls. He will bring it to you, and you will ascend it. Then he will lead you, he will grab the rein of that she-camel, and he will drag it forward. And 70,000 angels alayhimus salam will be in front of you, O Fatima, and they'll be holding flags made out of light. These flags will be the flags of tasbih, which possibly means that the flags will have the word Subhanallah written on them. Then what happens, Ya Rasulullah? He says, then as you are moving forward, 70,000 hur al-ayn, 70,000 huris will come and welcome you, O Fatima. These huris will have crowns that are beautified with gems or precious stones, beautified with green aquamarine, and they will stand on your right side and they will accompany you. So now you realize that there's this parade or procession that is done on the day of judgment for who? For Fatima az-Zahra alayhi salam. First, she has 70,000 angels who are in front of her, leading her to heaven. And then you have the 70,000 huris who join her on her right side. Then he says, after you cross the same amount of distance that you had crossed from the point you were resurrected until you met the 70,000 huris, Maryam alayha salam, Maryam bint Imran will welcome you. And she will have with her 70,000 huris as well. She will salute you with salam, and then she will stand on your left side. Now you have the mistress of the women of the worlds, and the mistress of the women of the worlds during her time, Maryam, who are moving together towards heaven. He says, as you're moving, after this incident, your mother Khadija bint Khuwaylid alayha salam, the first female believer who announced her belief in Allah and Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi, will welcome you, and she will have with her 70,000 angels who will be carrying the flags of takbir. Possibly meaning the flags will have the statement Allahu Akbar written on them. Then, when you get closer to the gathering, which gathering? The gathering where people are gathered, al-mahshar. When you get closer, Hawa alayha salam, the mother of mankind. Hawa alayhi salam welcomes you with 70,000 huris, and she will have Asya bint Muzahim with her. Asya was one of the greatest ladies, and Hawa as well was one of the greatest ladies in the history of mankind. They will welcome you, and then they will stand on your left side. So here you see that the procession or the parade is getting bigger and bigger. For who? For Fatima al-Zahra alayha salatu wassalam. Allah Ta'ala purposely sends Fatima alayha salam, these great women who are accompanied by thousands of hur al-ain or thousands of angels, to show the world that Fatima is not an ordinary mu'mina to be sent to heaven with one angel or one huriyah. No, there must be a huge parade done for the Lady of Light to reveal her impeccable status on that day. Then what happens, Ya Rasulullah? He says, sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi, then, Ya Fatima, when you penetrate through the crowd and you reach the midst of the crowd, there will be a call that is made, and that will stem from beneath the throne of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that caller will say, as he addresses the creations, lower your gaze. Lower your gaze, because Fatima wants to cross with those who are with her. Fatima as-Siddiqa, the veracious lady, the daughter of Muhammad, wants to cross with those who are with her. And so the Prophet says, on that day no one will gaze at you save Ibrahim alayhi salam, who happens to be her ancestor, and Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam, who happens to be her husband. The Prophet says, sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi, then ya Fatima, a pulpit made out of light will be upheld for you. And that pulpit will have 7 steps. Between each 2 steps there will be lines of angels. And on the right and left sides of the pulpit, the Hur al-Ain will be standing or sitting in lines. You will ascend it. And once you reach the top of the pulpit, Jibreel alayhi salam will come to you and will tell you, O Fatima, ask what you need. What do you want? Meaning whatever you want will be fulfilled today. So she will say, you will say, Ya Fatima, I want to see, my Lord, I want to see Al-Hasan wal-Husayn. She addresses Allah Ta'ala. My Lord, show me Al-Hasan wal-Husayn alayhim as-salam. He tells her at that point, you will see them. And the tradition mentions something that's quite tragic, which I don't want to mention right now, because we are celebrating her birth anniversary alayhi salam. Then he says, Jibreel will tell you again, Ya Fatima, what is your need? And you will say the following. Listen carefully. You will say, my Lord, my Shias. Meaning, I want my Shias with me. I want you to forgive them. I want to enter heaven with them. Allah will tell her, Allah will say, certainly I have forgiven them. She will say, my Lord, the Shias of my progeny. So Allah will say, I have certainly forgiven them. She will say, my Lord, the Shias of my Shias. I want them too. The Shias of my Shias. So Allah Ta'ala will say, He will say, انطلقي فمن اعتصم بك فهو معك في الجنة. Go forth, O Fatima. Anyone who held on to you, meaning in ad-dunya, will be with you in heaven. You know what the Prophet says at that point? The Prophet says the following. If you come out today with only this statement, it will be more than enough. This is your prize for tonight. This is your gift for tonight. He says at that point, the creations will wish that they had been Fatimiyin. The creations will wish that they had been what? Fatimiyin. Being a Fatimi means what? It means you're part of the followers of Fatima al-Zahra alayhi salam. You're one of those people who adheres to Fatima al-Zahra. You're one of the people who created a link between you and the Lady of Light, salawatullah wa salamuhu alayha. They will wish, if only we were Fatimiyin, because they know, they understand that had they been Fatimiyin, they would have been saved by Zahra, salawatullah wa salamuhu alayha. The Prophet says, at that point you will move forward with your Shi'as, the Shi'as of the Commander of the Faithful, and the Shi'as of your progeny. Before we continue, a question comes to mind, which is, what is meant by the Shi'as? The Shi'as of my progeny, the Shi'as of my Shi'as. What does she mean, alayhi salam? Possibly she means, when she says my Shi'as, the Shi'as who were living in her era. When she says the Shi'as of my progeny, she is referring to the Shi'as who lived during the days of the other Imams, the 11 Imams alayhimus salam. And when she says the Shi'as of my Shi'as, she's referring, insha'Allah ta'ala, to the likes of you and me, insha'Allah. Those who live during the occultation of the Imam, Sahib al-Zaman, and live after his reappearance, Ajjalallahu Farajah, because we have come after who? After the generations of Muslimin who actually had the honor of meeting the apparent Imams, Salamullahi alayhim. So he says you'll move with them towards heaven. Then what happens, Ya Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam? He says the Shi'as will be in a state of peace. They will be safe. Whilst people are what? Whilst people are afraid. Their thirst will be quenched when people will be thirsty. What else happens, Ya Rasulullah? He says, when you approach the gate of heaven, 12,000 Hur al-Ain will welcome you, Ya Fatima. They welcome Fatima into heaven. These Huris will not have welcomed anyone before you and will not welcome anyone after you. And once you enter heaven, the people of heaven, meaning those who are already in heaven, like who? Like al-Hur al-Ain, or the servants, al-Wildan al-Mukhalladun, they will give glad tidings to each other, saying that Fatima alayha salam, Zahra, has entered heaven. Then your Shi'as will be sitting on dining tables. Dining tables will be brought for the Shi'as, which will be made out of precious stones and will have legs or poles made out of light. They'll be enjoying food in heaven. Listen carefully. Whilst people are in hisab. Imagine that. Human beings are where? They're still in al-mahshar, in that land of the Day of Judgment. And Allah is asking them, why did you do X, Y, and Z? Why did you do this? Why did you do that? Whilst the Shi'as of Fatima are where? They're already in heaven. They're having a blast. Why? Because they were emulating. They were real Shi'as. They were emulating the Lady of Light, Fatima, salawatullah alayha. They were followers of Fatima al-Zahra and Ahlul Bayt, salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayhim. If we want to be from those, my brothers and sisters, those people who ultimately enter heaven, those people who enter heaven and enjoy the blessings of heaven before other people enter heaven, whilst people are still in hisab, then believing in Ahlul Bayt is a must. But on top of that, emulating them, following their commands is a must. The more we follow their commands, the closer we'll be to actually being real Shi'as, like Salman, Abu Dhar, and Miqdad, and Ammar bin Yasir, rahmatullah ta'ala alayhim. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, for the sake of the Lady of Light, Fatima salawatullahi wa salamu alayha, to hasten the reappearance of Sahib al-Zaman, Ajjalallahu ta'ala farajah, to fulfill our needs, to bless us, to keep us with the Lady of Light alayha salatu wassalam in this world and the next, to make us from those who are saved on that difficult day, the Day of Judgment, through their loyalty towards Fatima al-Zahra alayha salatu wassalam. We ask Allah Azza wa Jal to protect all believers, to grant us victory over our enemies, to grant us victory over the tyrants. Ameen Rabbal Alameen. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to heal the sick for the sake of the sick Imam Zain al-Abidin alayhi salam, and to bless all believers who have passed away, especially our dear family members and friends, those who are completely forgotten, never mentioned, the great martyrs and the noble scholars. إلى أرواحهم جميعا وإلى أرواح أمواتكم وأمواتي لا سيما إلى أرواح والدي وأخي وحبيبي حسين نبعث ثواب هذه الكلمة وثواب الفاتحة تسبقها صلاة على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد واسمعك حبيبي سيدنا. أحسن عليكم إن شاء الله. أسعد الله أيامكم. All right, now we have a trivia game. شو مهدي إلي? Nothing? Okay. If we can just turn off the live broadcast. جزاكم الله خيرا. So we're going to have a trivia game. If anyone wants to leave from the brothers, please use this door. Okay? Although I encourage you to stay for the trivia game. If any sister is leaving, please use the back door. Jazakumullah khaira. We still have also pizza and we have cake. I want you to form two groups. One group for the brothers, one group for the sisters. And I want you to choose a speaker, someone who speaks on